welcome back to the main stage. We are so excited to have you today. I hope that you're checking out the agenda. We've got overlapping sessions at this summit. So if you're seeing there's a break on one stage, there might be a live session on another stage. Check that agenda. Again, it's displayed in your time zone and it's dynamic. So it will be updating as sessions end and sessions begin. So that's kind of your main point, where to go to find the fun. Speaking of fun, our next speaker is the Chief Customer Officer at Higher Logic. He has spent several years in different functional leadership roles in which he has developed a methodology for building, scaling, and operating customer-centered organizations. Today, he will be sharing how he built the world's fastest growing customer success community, Gain, Grow, Retain, and achieved explosive growth in just 4 months. Please welcome to the virtual stage, Jay Nathan.
Hey, Beth, thank you for having me. Good to see everybody today.
Thanks, Jay.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right in here. So as Beth mentioned, my name is Jay Nathan, Chief Customer Officer at Higher Logic. Higher Logic is a community and human engagement platform. We work in the association space. We work in the corporate space, B2B SaaS companies, which we are one of. So very excited to be here speaking with you all today. Going to take some questions at the end. So please, have some questions ready for me so I don't feel bad at the end of this. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about community from my perspective, and then also about Gain, Grow, Retain specifically, how we built it. And there's a special element of this is focused on multi-channel that I really want to sort of drive home in this talk with you today. So thank you for having me, and let's jump right in. So, it's never been more important to engage your community, whether that's customers, whether that's members, users. This has been a challenging year, and one of the things that we've found is that having high quality digital and virtual engagement with our customers has been a really powerful thing for us. So, if you look across, Higher Logic serves thousands of organizations with their community, for their community needs. And if you look across our entire platform this year, usage is up by about 30% across our entire portfolio of customers, which means it tells us a lot, right? It tells us that this is an opportunity. People need engagement. They want to interact. They want to be connected in a way that they've probably never wanted to be connected so badly before. I know personally that I do. So obviously, I'm talking to community professionals, right? This is a group that understands the value of community and the approach, but we're looking to drive a one-to-many approach, going outside of the normal day-to-day marketing campaign to create real reach and real engagement into our customer bases, and to do more with less, to really drive one-to-many engagement with our customers and our members and our users. So peer-to-peer connections, obviously powerful. It's why we're all here. And I'm excited to share with you sort of the story of Gain, Grow, Retain and why we created it, and what it means for our business and what it means for our users. So the focus of this talk is really going to be based on how we cater to what our users need and want. Like the biggest thing that I've learned in building communities is that user needs and user desires are really the thing that we're chasing after here. We're looking to figure out what's motivating our users. Are they searching for career advancement? Are they looking to get better at their craft? Are they looking to get certified? All these things are critical, but understanding the motivations of our users is really job number one as community leaders, and will allow us to build a much more engaging community for them to participate in. So you're going to hear me talk a little bit about how we listen to our communities and what we do to sort of use the feedback that we get to make our communities better and stronger. Higher Logic is we're a platform company, and so we have lots of data, right? We have lots of data on lots of different types of communities. And if you look at communities across the spectrum of small to large, we have communities as small as 100 people all the way up to 160, 170, 200,000 members on our platform. And the thing that you'll find is that no matter what, engagement and contribution of content is really the differentiating factor in whether a community is successful or just mediocre. And as a community gets larger, obviously the number of people that are going to be contributing in a deep way and actually creating content in that platform and in that environment is going to go down relative to the size of the organization. So one of the things that we do with our customers, and we try to do in the Gain, Grow, Retain community, which I promise I'm going to get to, is we try to drive the percentage of contributors and people who are not just reading, but contributing and engaging with the content there. And so one of our biggest success stories at Higher Logic is not the 160,000 person community, the 175,000 person community. It's the 100 person community that has 80 active, engaged participants that are creating meaningful discussions and content in that environment. So your community doesn't have to be huge to be powerful, and it can still be helpful. And many of you already know that that's the case. So one of the things that we're looking to do is really, like I said, drive the engagement through content creation. And that is like, let's try to take the bystanders and move them up the funnel to drive creation of content and really influencing their peers around them. So as we created the Gain, Grow, Retain community, it's important for me to point out that this is not, it's much more than an online forum for our members. We actually use it to test content, to drive new ideas, to figure out new ways of how we should be engaging, and really figure out how we are going to appeal to the interests of our community. It's sort of like the canary in the coal mine. So I'm going to jump forward here. So what is Gain, Grow, Retain? So this is a community for customer success leaders. And if you don't know what customer success is, many of you probably work in the technology field, but customer success is it's really the approach of making sure that your customers get the most value and output out of your products. And so customer success has been a growing trend in the tech space for really since SaaS was born, and really the terminology customer success has really grown in importance. People with those job descriptions are popping up all over LinkedIn, really over the past decade. It's been around for a lot longer than that, but customer success is really the motion that we use internally within a software company to drive value and growth in our business through making our customers successful and helping them reach their goals and outcomes. So we launched a community for customer success professionals called Gain, Grow, Retain. Now, I can't go any further without talking about my partner in crime, a guy named Jeff Brunsbach. And so everything you're seeing here, I did not do this myself. Jeff is really our community manager. He's the heart and soul of it. I am one of the active and enthusiastic participants and leaders of this community. But you'll hear me talk about Jeff as we go. So I wanted to introduce him now. The community itself launched just a few months ago. We launched it in earnest back in March of this year when the COVID lockdown really came and started to affect us all. We're up to over 5,000 members in our database. We have 3,000 active members in our actual community online itself. So this has been a pretty quick growth curve for us. It's growing very quickly, month over month, quarter over quarter at this point. And so we built this community when we were part of a company called Customer Imperative, which is a consulting firm that I founded several years ago to work with SaaS companies. We basically launched this as part of our business strategy. And earlier or I should say later this summer, became part of Higher Logic, where I now lead all the customer activities in Higher Logic. And Jeff, my partner, is now Director of Customer Experience. So here's the story of how this really started. So really, if you go back and look at how we began to engage with our audience, this started on LinkedIn, and this is really the beginning of the multi-channel story for us. But about 18 months ago, I said to Jeff, like, hey, I think I really need to get active on LinkedIn, and you probably do as well. There's 700 million users on LinkedIn. there's not a lot of conversation happening around this topic of customer success. And what conversation there is, we sort of want to be a part of so we can learn and perhaps begin to influence. So we made a commitment to start posting on LinkedIn every day for 30 days. And what we found was that there were a lot of interested people in those conversations that really began to join in. They started to comment, they started to engage with our posts there. And before we knew it, we had sort of built a little presence on LinkedIn and started to make some new friends. So this is back in mid 2019. What we quickly found was that we could use that as a place to test ideas. We could put posts out there. If people didn't engage with them or the topics weren't interesting, we immediately got that feedback based on how much engagement we had on those topics. And if they did like it, then we knew that it was a topic that we probably needed to double down on. So LinkedIn became a very important, probably at the very beginning of our community strategy was LinkedIn, where we were going out there and engaging with like-minded people, using hashtags that people understood, tagging people that we knew were experts in the area that we wanted to talk about, which was customer success. We really tried to use real life situations from what we were seeing in the consulting work that we were doing and within our customers to sort of drive the conversation there. So it all started on LinkedIn, but about September of last year, and we have a lot of these stories that start with, "Hey, Jeff, we should try X, Y, and Z," or "Hey, Jay, we should go try X, Y, and Z." And so about September of last year, I said to Jeff, "Hey, Jeff, we should try a podcast. We should go launch a podcast and see if people would listen to it." So back in September of 2019, we launched our first episode of our podcast. And as you can see, we sort of plodded along for months and months and months. But as of the past 6 months, the listenership to our podcast has really spiked. We're up to well over 5,000 listens per month. And I fully expect that to be up to around 10,000 by the end of the year on the trend that we're currently on. But the podcast was a great way to allow us to, one, meet new people in our community, in this fledgling community that we had started to build. It was an easy way to get introductions into people that we hadn't met yet, and also to provide value to our to the people that we wanted to interact with, either our customers or the people that we were beginning to interact with on LinkedIn. So our motto for the podcast is really like, let the listener be a fly on the wall to just an interesting conversation. So we began to have some really interesting conversations. We began to record them. And it's simple, guys. We use Zoom. We record our Zoom calls, and then we use a very simple tool to publish those Zoom calls, the audio from them, onto our podcast feed. So if you haven't walked up to podcasting yet, you should do it. It's easier than you might think, and it's a really interesting and engaging channel for people to engage with your community brand with. So we launched the podcast. The podcast is growing. Channel number 2, LinkedIn podcast. So then something really interesting happened. About March, we all got sent home, right? We all had to begin working from our homes. We became more isolated. In particular, in the customer success world, we had a lot of customer success practitioners who were responsible for customer engagement and customer retention who were saying, man, I have a lot of customers coming at me asking for concessions on their fees or flexibility on their payment terms so that they could actually make it through the next period as budgets began to tighten. About that same time, one of our friends on LinkedIn posted, he's a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, posted a link that he was going to start a Chief Marketing Officer office hours call for folks who wanted to join in and just sort of commiserate a little bit, share some ideas of what they were doing during this period. It was one of those moments where we said, hey, Jay, or I said to Jeff, hey, Jeff, we should totally steal this office hours idea and have a live session. So we committed. We said, okay, we're going to go do 4 weeks of live office hours calls. Week number 1, we decided to choose 4 of our close friends and make them a panel for discussion, to lead discussion amongst our group. We had 40 people on the first call. One of the things that we always started doing from the beginning on these calls was sending a follow-up survey after each call. And after the first call, the folks, the 40 people who were on the call responded at a very high rate, by the way. and said, hey, the panel was awesome, the discussion was great, but more of us would like an opportunity to talk, and we'd like to engage and share our story and get feedback on our specific problems. And so we said, all right, we'll change the format of office hours. So from that point forward, we actually changed it, and we learned a facilitation technique that allowed us to bring 10, 15, 20 people into the discussion on a very large Zoom call. Today we still host this Zoom call every week. We have between 150 and 200 people on this call every single week. Oftentimes we have upwards of 20, 30, 40 people that will participate in a call, in this call. And when I say participate, I mean they will be speaking, while others are just listening and lurking, which is fine with us. But we're trying to draw them into and engage them in the discussion here. So it's been a fantastic channel for us to sort of build that. Now, once we started building the podcast and building the office hours, then we started noticing that people wanted to continue the conversation between the sessions. So while we were continuing to experiment with the format, and by the way, we're still experimenting with the format, we've just introduced some new elements to it that allow us to have some one-on-one breakout time with individuals on these calls for the first 10 or 15 minutes of the call each week using Zoom breakout rooms. So there's all kinds of innovation that we still have to do on office hours. But what we noticed, and when we started, again, asking for feedback, what did people who were participating and engaging, what did they think? They told us that the conversations were great, but now between the calls, they wanted to have more discussion during the week. We have the calls every Thursday morning, Eastern time, but they wanted to continue having discussions with these peers that were on the call in between them. So we said, hey, you know what? Hey, Jay, hey, Jeff, we ought to try an online community and adding an online community to what we're doing. So we started small, an online community, and launched that in the April May timeframe. And so, but we followed a formula. And actually, at that point, we hadn't joined Higher Logic yet. But my good friend Heather McNair, I had known her for several years, and I called Heather up. I said, "Hey, Heather, we're starting a community. It's going to be small. Give me your playbook on how we should go about driving engagement here from day one." So the process that she outlined was very simple. Start with early adopters. We started with 150 people. We went out to LinkedIn. We announced it on our office hours calls, and we recruited 150 people who were passionate. We put rules in place that said, hey, if you're going to be an early adopter of the Gain, Grow, Retain community, you've got to be active. You got to provide feedback. And that did a couple things for us. One, it gave us a very energized base of users that are still, they have an early adopter badge in our community today. So they sort of have that irreplaceable, that priceless, early adopter moniker associated with their name of the Gain, Grow, Retain community. But the other thing that it did for us was helped us seed content into the community that we knew was going to be important for folks that we wanted to invite in after the early adopter period was over. Finally, we also had those people go on to LinkedIn and actually add Gain, Grow, Retain as a membership on their profile. So we actually now have hundreds of people on LinkedIn that have Gain, Grow, Retain on their profiles to help us increase the visibility of the community. So, finally, we recruited moderators out of that early adopters group. We created rules of engagement. We don't allow advertising. We don't allow self-promotion, all the things that you all are probably doing in your communities as well. But obviously, it was really important to us for this to be a thought leadership community, not a community run by vendors, not a community that was going to be selling or pushing products on people, but really a community to push the state-of-the-art forward of customer success. Again, a relatively new set of practices, a relatively new name for a job to have in a software company. So we knew that just driving the right kind of engagement, the right kind of discussions without pushing products on people was going to be super duper important. So now that we've built this community, we get a deeper and deeper understanding of the content and the topics that are going to resonate with our community every single day. And we've met some extraordinary people. And so one of the things that we've now added in as yet another channel is sort of a webinar series. And the webinar series is called the Operator Excellence Series. So what we do is we find members of our community who are head and shoulders above the others in a certain area in terms of how they run their business. And we sort of put them on a pedestal. We give them the opportunity to share their work. We use that term all the time, share your work, and really show off the great stuff that they're doing and help people learn and get better as a result. So we've launched the Operator Excellence Series. We've launched another office hours series for a different part of our audience, which is the individual contributor audience, not necessarily the management subgroup. We have launched other subgroups that are specific to certain parts of the technology industry. So for instance, there are a lot of companies that are software companies, but they're cybersecurity companies, and that's a very specific kind of company, and they have a very specific kind of customer success motion. And so the people in that community have a very specific set of problems that they're now working together to resolve. And then finally, we launched a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative within our community. We elected a committee chair for that. Not only are we helping or trying to drive the diversity, equity, and inclusion in our own community, but we're actually now trying to advocate for how we increase that in our industry as a whole. Technology overall, I think, is known to have a little bit of an inclusion and diversity challenge. And so we're actually committed to helping as a community to help advance the state of the art there. So really, we are building an overall program that's really driven toward engaging our members, the people that we really care about in the community. We care about all the people in the community, but it's a way to really drive engagement well beyond what we would typically be able to do with an email newsletter or just pure email outreach. And it's created this wildly fanatic base of members that we have in our community that are just passionate about helping others grow. We've had people that have gotten jobs by working closely with other members of the community. And it's just been a really, really exciting thing for us. So, in takeaway, I love some of the testimonials that we've gotten from some of our members. So this community is incredibly valuable, passionate, altruistic, and overall well-rounded resource for CS leaders. It's become the place that I turn to when I'm looking for new ideas, advice, general feedback on all things customer success related. Depth and breadth of experience is really unparalleled, and I look forward to catching up here over the next week. So, like, Sherry's sentiment here is awesome. And I've been doing customer success type roles and leading teams like this for almost 20 years now. And there are tons of unanswered questions, right? And this goes for every domain and every industry. The world is changing. Our markets are changing. The way we work is changing. And so leveraging the power of our communities to learn from others that are doing things really well, to help others, to build a network of people that makes it easier to recruit is just such an important aspect of my career, I feel. And then Alex said, Gain, Grow, Retain is an incredible resource that provides huge value to customer success leaders. There's high engagement and real depth of experience and an excellent sounding board for ideas and collecting feedback. This is the kind of feedback you want in your community, right? So, sort of in closing here, it doesn't matter whether your community is targeting users of your product, members of an association, or members of just an audience at large in a thought leadership capacity. We have the ability to engage and create community like we've never had before. We have tools. Yes, we have online community tools, and those are great. Higher Logic is great. We love it. However, it goes well beyond any single channel, right? So social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the podcast, get your community in somebody's ears, have live events that are not scripted and formal, have off the cuff discussion with subgroups. We often talk about doing things that don't scale. And in a community, I think that is so important to do things that don't scale, because those are the things that create real human connections and make people feel very strongly about interacting with your brand, whatever it is that you're trying to promote or advocate for. So, I wish you all the best of luck in your community. I would love if you have any questions about how Gain, Grow, Retain is structured, how we grew so quickly. I would love to answer any questions that you have. I'd love to hear feedback from you, some of the best community professionals in the world, on how we've put our community together and what suggestions you would have to make us even better. So you can check out our community at gaingrowretain.com. As you can see here, and you can follow that QR code. Additionally, I'd love to connect with you personally. So if you're up for connecting on LinkedIn, you can find me pretty easily. It's just J Nathan on LinkedIn, and then my Twitter handle is @JNathan, so you can find me there as well. But with that, I appreciate your time and attention. I hope the rest of the conference is an amazing learning experience for you, and I look forward to connecting with you out in the community.
Thanks so much, Jay. Let's have a huge standing ovation for Jay Nathan, everybody. I want to do this, but I wonder if that's just a terrible sound in the microphone. Well, Jay, that was awesome, and we do actually have a couple of questions. So we've got a nice amount of time to answer some of those questions. So first of all, question one. One of the biggest challenges I see in online communities is the commitment, the reliability that people act online without constantly reactivating them. Would you say that gamification, as you said, with badges helped with that?
Yes, it absolutely did. So one of the first things we got in place in our community was a point system. And it was a relatively simple point system, but what we found is that people got really, really engaged around that. And in fact, one of the other things that we did was start to do a LinkedIn post every Tuesday. And I think we've probably dropped off on this a little bit. We probably need to pick it back up. But we did a LinkedIn post to highlight the top 10 contributors each week. So part of it is the gamification. Part of it is how you continuously promote that and draw other people into what you're doing there. But yeah, I mean, reactivation, and we face that too. We have a lot of lurkers on our community that, we know they're getting value. Part of the cool thing that happens with Higher Logic, that's our community platform. I'm sure there are other community platforms that do the same thing here, but we have email digests that go out, and I know people are consuming that content. I know that they're consuming content in the podcast. I know they're joining office hours. We don't always get those signals flowing back into one place. But I think having multiple channels to engage people is really important. And then the gamification, it never hurts. In fact, people just go wild over the badges, as this crowd probably knows very well.
Yeah, totally. On that note, with all of the different channels that you talk about, how do you make sure that you don't become a jack of all trades and a master of none? How do you truly make sure that you're tracking the success of each different space to make sure that all of them are worth your team's time?
Yeah, that's a great question, because initially when we launched this, it was just me and one other person, me and Jeff. And so when I say we were scrappy, we were really, really scrappy. And we didn't know some of these channels were going to work very well, honestly. I mean, you saw the long, slow, trend on the podcast. It took a while for that to really gain traction. I think some of it is just intuition. If you, not every channel is going to have an immediate ROI, right? But if you have engagement there, and some of it is a gut feel, and I think that's one of our challenges as community leaders, is that we have to take that gut feel and sort of communicate it back out as a business result in some way. So if we can say, hey, look, we have 200 highly engaged people on a Zoom call each week. Well, to us, that's worth it, right? We can put whatever messaging we need to into there. We can keep them rallied around interesting ideas. We can cross-pollinate the other channels. So we actually, when we drive people in our office hours calls into the community to go answer follow-up questions on a topic we might have not gotten to that day, then it actually, you can see the bump in the lift on the online piece. So it's really we picked the 5 channels that we think are the best and strongest for us, and then we'll continue to add as we see new opportunity there.
That's fair. I do appreciate, it is scrappy in the beginning. I feel like if you drew a graph of that, it would be like work to growth. And the work is really a lot at the beginning. The growth is not a lot at the
Yeah.
beginning. And then it kind of evens out in the end. So I appreciate that. Um, I'm impressed that you had 40 people at your first office hours. Can you tell some of the budding virtual event enthusiasts out there just some advice for how you get 40 people to show up to your first event?
Yeah, recruit a bunch of your friends to start with, but we did that, right? We started with LinkedIn, and we recruited people to join that we knew were going to be passionate and engaging there. And the first event we did was, or the first office hour session. I hesitate to call it an event because it wasn't that formal, but we had four people that sat on a panel that we knew would attract other people into the discussion. Now we abandoned that panel format based on the feedback, which is a key shift for us to sort of getting to the engagement that we wanted there. But we used other people, not ourselves. We've always considered ourselves the DJ, not the talent. I didn't come up with that. I don't know who did exactly. But if we could put our community members on a pedestal and sort of show the great work that they're doing and just be the facilitator of that, things have turned out pretty well. So week number one was 40, week number two was 75, then it jumped to 100, 125. And then, by the time we did our first Operator Excellence Series call, we had 300 people on that Zoom call who all wanted to hear how Ziv was doing his work on relationship management. So, it's been cool to watch the engagement just sort of climb, even in those high touch kind of scenarios.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So that many people in these events, I'll call them events, even though they're
Thank you.
casual, they're still events. I wonder what your next project is. I mean, have you kind of talked about what the next channel is going to be?
Well, yeah, we've talked a lot about one of the things we love to do is a live event, right? Or a live in-person event. And that was very much part of our plans before we had even started talking about that before we launched the community in earnest back in March, April, May timeframe. So, God willing, we'll get back to a place where we can do face-to-face events again, and we're really excited about doing that. That's the ultimate channel, right? You get somebody face-to-face, it's sort of like almost like a customer for life kind of situation. So live events is something for us. We're also testing out different types of engagements. We just launched something called the Coaching Corner in our community in partnership with one of the other software vendors in our space. And it's really an intimate group where we've paired up mentors and mentees from the customer success industry. So it's been a great new channel for us. Not a big one, right? We're not generating a bunch of leads, but we're generating a lot of engagement. Small communities, highly engaged. So we're looking for more things like that, as well as sort of the big bang kind of approaches where we can get hundreds or even thousands of people together.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like that's the whole point of community. It's not just these like one-off like CMX Summit one-offs. It's what do you do for the rest of the year? How do you engage people consistently over the rest of the year? So I like that you're
Right.
thinking about
That's
that.
right. Yeah, at Higher Logic,
Um,
we have our. Oh, sorry, I talked over you.
no, that's okay. I think there's a little delay, but go ahead at higher logic.
All right, so at Higher Logic, we're getting ready to do our fall event. Of course, this year it's going to be virtual and not in person like it normally is. But we're looking at that as the kickoff of our content stream, right? To our user base to really be able to um, engage with them on we want to have Superforum all year long, right? Is how we want to think about that. Of course, there is going to be concentrated time, and again, we'll get in person again soon, hopefully. But until then, we're going to be really putting a lot of content and great engagement opportunities out there for the customers.
Awesome. And Jay, we've got time for one last question. So I'm going to take a couple of questions I see and like merge them into one. People who are hoping to introduce a customer education opportunity into their online community, what advice do you have for those people who want to introduce that channel into their online community?
Well, I'm not an expert in that one, so I'll be the first to say that. But we are looking at it right now. at Higher Logic. And then we've also looked in just our Gain, Grow, Retain community, which is our B2B SaaS customer success focused area. We're looking at building partnerships with people who provide training to that market. So really, I think you have to determine whether it's going to be a paid offering or a free offering. If it's a free offering, how do you generate enough interest in it to have people complete it? Some people don't value things as much if they're free. So there's probably a pricing strategy discussion. But the other thing is with a lot of the engagement opportunities that we have, they're all about education. They're all about career growth. So you can look at it on a micro level, and then sort of every interaction, every engagement, every webinar, every office hours, every podcast, even you're going to teach something, but then it scales all the way up to formal certification on the other end, right? And how do you include that and incorporate it? Is there a certification associated with your brand and that sort of thing? So honestly, not an expert in it yet, but we're trying to figure out how community or how education really is going to fold into the Gain, Grow, Retain community in the coming quarters.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you for your time. And like he mentioned, you can connect on Twitter and LinkedIn. Get to search him there. Big standing ovation. Hooray.